Just when I thought I could take it easy this week and work on some of my regular scheduled videos, Nintendo does it again and hits us with another bombshell regarding Age of Calamity. I'm not gonna do a frame-by-frame analysis as it seems kinda moot at this point. You can bet there's gonna be plenty of those in the incoming hours and days ahead. What I want to do is just give my 2 cents in theory about some of the stuff we saw and especially the ominous figure at the end. So let's do a quick dive into it. One question that a lot of people probably have is this the same Master Koga from Breath of the Wild? I mean, their appearance and body language definitely looks pretty much identical, but that doesn't necessarily mean this is the same person by any means. As we all know, the Yiga are former Sheikah, which means their lifespan should be about the same. Unless Koga has always been overweight and is still as nimble as he's always been in Breath of the Wild, I find it kinda hard to believe that the Koga from Breath of the Wild is the same person but now 120 years old. Not to mention, the trailer seems to hint that Link & Co. will have an encounter with Koga at some point in the story. But the Koga we see in Breath of the Wild doesn't recognize Link from his appearance. The only reason he knows that Link is the one they've been looking for is because he spots the Sheikah slate on his hip. This wouldn't make sense if this is indeed the same person, unless Koga has somehow forgotten, which doesn't really add up. How can you forget your arch nemesis? There are plenty of people who've already pointed out that Koga isn't necessarily a name, but rather a title, kinda like Sensei. From his voice, he doesn't exactly sound like a 20-year-old, so I'm predicting that this is not the same person. I mean, we don't even know what the guy looks like underneath his mask, so even though their general appearance looks similar, we cannot really confirm anything at this point. We've already seen with Impa and Paya that descendants apparently can look pretty much identical. Besides Koga himself, we also see a new Yiga member never before seen in Breath of the Wild. From the looks of it, he is basically a more badass blade master, most likely a second in command or general of sorts. He's wielding a double wind cleaver instead of one, and the wind cleavers themselves also slightly differ from the usual ones, as the ones we see here have 4 points on the hilt, whereas the original wind cleavers have 3. His mask is also damaged with some sort of a scar running diagonally across it, indicating that he's probably seen some action. Other than that, there isn't really much to say about this new character other than the fact that he is clearly boss material. But let's move on to the real eye-catcher in this teaser. This mysterious figure shown at the end. Actually, this person is already shown earlier in the teaser right here. And this scene clearly takes place inside the grand entrance of the Yiga clan hideout, as we can see one of the statues in the background. So whoever this figure is, they are present at the hideout and conspiring alongside Koga and this new Yiga general guy. Also, the candle in the foreground is very smartly placed in front of the backside of this person's robe. Fast forward to the end of the teaser and we can see why. The robe has the Gerudo symbol on it. I've also seen some people suggest that he's holding a staff, but I don't know about you guys, but it doesn't really seem like a staff to me. The way this red orb bobs up and down seems more like it's floating in midair. We don't really see it attached to a stick, and we also don't see a stick on the ground in either of the 2 shots. Anyway, we'll go over what the orb could mean later in the video. The final shot reveals the upper half of this elusive figure's face, after which we get a fade out similar to the ones we've seen in previous teasers as well as the memories from Breath of the Wild. Now, I've already seen so many suggestions floating around about the possible identity of this mystery person. Twin Rova, Aghanim, the fortune teller talked about in Breath of the Wild's backstory, a Twilight, a Zonai. Yeah, you get the point. Of course, until the game actually comes out, these will just remain speculations, just like with Master Koga. So I'm just gonna give you my prediction / theory about this, and we can see how right or wrong I was when the game comes out. First off, I'm gonna save myself the headache right now and say I think this person is a woman. The eyeshadow and the face structure definitely seems to hint in that direction. So I'm just gonna call this figure she from now on, or else I'm gonna have to constantly switch up my wording, which ruins the flow of the video. There is another reason why I draw this conclusion. It's not just based on physical appearance, but I'll explain that later. But if it turns out that this person is something else, I apologize in advance for being wrong. Aside from the Gerudo symbol on the cloak, we can also see that she wears jewelry on her forehead, which seems to symbolize Ganon's Malice Eye, which is very interesting in and of itself as we've never seen this symbol before. Whoever this person is, she seems to know about Ganon's Malice form, even though he hasn't been seen for the last 10,000 years. And pretty much nobody else seems to have remembered his existence. So either she is an extremely old entity, or the knowledge about Calamity Ganon has been passed on to her. Which ties into the question of, what is she exactly? What kind of people or race does she belong to? Well, if the Gerudo symbolism on her cloak wasn't enough, which could of course just be a tribute, but look at the eye color. They are yellow. Which race historically had yellow eyes? The ancient Gerudo from the distant past, including Ganondorf himself. Besides that, we also have the eyeshadow, which is also a typical trait of the Gerudo women from that era. So my conclusion is that this person is probably an ancient Gerudo. I don't necessarily think it's Twin Rova though. It could be, but I'm hoping that Nintendo is a bit more creative than that and this will be a completely new character we haven't seen before. Whatever the case may be, this seems to be a Gerudo from the ancient times. Unlike the modern day Gerudo, which don't have yellow eyes and have pointy ears from thousands of years of crossbreeding with Hylian men, this one seems to be old school. This is further evident from the fact that Ganondorf's corpse seen in the E3 trailer still has rounded ears. Check out Master Nintendo Bandit's video about this. If this person indeed turns out to be a Gerudo, that solidifies even further that she has to be female since, well, according to the lore of the Gerudo, no more than one male exists at the same time. This could mean that this mystery person and Ganondorf come from the same era, which would be amazing. The next question would be, what is her role in this story? Well, if you ask me, I think she could very well be the fortune teller who deceived the royal family into digging up the divine beasts and the guardians. I've mentioned before in earlier videos that I believe that the fortune teller may have been a Ganon loyalist, and Creating a Champion states that this fortune teller disappeared after the events of the Calamity, and may have gone into hiding. Tell me this doesn't fit the profile of this newly introduced character. A character which we haven't seen before and doesn't show up in Breath of the Wild. Next, let's focus on the orb. And yes, I am still calling it an orb as of right now. I refuse to call something a staff until I see a stick, damn it. Anyway, from its shape, it looks to be an ancient core. Ancient cores can be found in Breath of the Wild, and they are basically what powers the Guardians and other machinery. You'll often obtain one after defeating a Guardian Stalker. However, by default, these cores have a blue and orange glow. This one glows a reddish-pink color, meaning it's probably an ancient core corrupted with malice. And what happens when Calamity Ganon corrupts something with malice? He's able to perceive the world through that being or object. Each corrupted machine or malice-infested being is basically a piece of Ganon's conscience. And I think this cloaked figure is using this corrupted core to communicate with Ganondorf himself. Since, well, if it's corrupted, a piece of his conscience is in there. In my video about Ganondorf the Puppet Master, I suggested that Ganondorf had to have someone to serve as his eyes above ground. Well, this is probably that person. This also explains why the Yiga knew exactly what to do during the Calamity despite their incompetence. They were led by this mystery figure who in turn is receiving instructions from the man himself. My prediction is that this core was purposely corrupted at some point to serve as almost like a crystal ball to talk to the King of Evil. Again, very reminiscent of the crystal ball from Lord of the Rings, which is called a Palantir, and also used to communicate with the main baddie, Sauron. The last option I want to cover is, does this mean we'll get a glimpse of Ganondorf in Age of Calamity? And again, I'm not talking about Calamity Ganon, which as we know by now is just a puppet. I'm talking about the corpse hidden underground. I was already kind of hoping this game would tie into or at least hint at what is to come in Breath of the Wild 2, but prior to this teaser, I never really saw a way they could achieve something like that. But this changes everything, and we might actually get to see cutscenes where we see this cloaked figure talking to the actual Ganondorf. And if she doesn't die in the Age of Calamity, we might actually see her return in Breath of the Wild 2. It would be a perfect transition into the sequel. Whatever the case may be, this game, together with Breath of the Wild and its upcoming sequel, is shaping up to be the biggest Zelda canon story we've ever seen in Zelda history. And that makes me very happy. As always, a big thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Hopefully a proper one this time. Oh, give me a break, Nintendo.